It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Healthcare, Project 2025, Trump's great concept of a plan. And look, you saw the interview with Kirsten Welker over at NBC News, where she said, quote, sir, you said during the campaign you have a concept of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for healthcare? And now, here's the thing. This is the weird part. Heard the question. It's a good question. It's a right question. Maybe question should have been asked, I don't know, well before the November election. Just throwing this out here. The fact that he got away with, we've got concepts of a plan. Yeah, really bad ones. Maybe the actual plan? Kind of thought. Now, this is where Democrats and Republicans held to very different standards. Because if Kamala Harris had said, well, we've got a concept, the piranha in the mainstream corporate-controlled media would have eaten her alive. But the fact that it's Trump, well, we've got a concept. Now, I love how he answered the question. So again, her question is, sir, you said during the campaign you have concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for healthcare? And he said, yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better. Still concepts. They're still not plans. Welker rightly follows up with still concepts. Do you have a fully developed plan? And the answer, quite frankly, is no. There's never been a plan. There's never going to be a plan. But I do love what Trump came back with. Very collegially, he says, let me explain. And this is the part that really I'm kind of more concerned about with than anything. Because in this non-answer is really an answer. Where he says, let me explain. We have the biggest healthcare companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. So we've set it up with all the big companies, good. Anything the government does, bad. He goes on, he says, Obamacare stinks, it's lousy. There are better answers, he says. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and everybody else, and I'd do something about it. So hold on, wait. So what? You have concepts of a plan. Concepts. Obamacare stinks. What he's saying, it's lousy. There are better answers, he says. His words. Then he follows it up with, if we come up with a better answer, if we come up with a better answer, then I'll present it to the Democrats and everybody else. So is that to lead me to believe that there isn't an answer there? And you don't have one? You're not really even thinking of it. There's no policy. There's nothing. Outside of pay or die, gut what little social safety net we have. That's the plan? Now understand, the ACA right now protects more than 100 million people with pre-existing conditions? It requires health plans to cover things, I don't know, like preventative care. It limits out-of-pocket costs. It does a lot of really good things that we wanted to do. I don't think it went far enough, not even close. More absolutely needs to be done, and we should have been doing that all along. Remember, this happened back, 2010? Here we are 14 years later, still trying to figure out. They're still trying to kill it, much like Medicare. They're still trying to kill it. And this is where Democrats, I think, have fallen down on the job, and ultimately Democratic voters as a whole, because now the Affordable Care Act seems to be fairly popular. People are going, what? I don't have to worry about insurance limits? I look at my wife's situation. We're well past what would have been the limit pre-Obamacare. The only reason she's still getting the care that she's getting now is because we don't have a cap anymore. The insurance company has to cover all of the costs, not just an arbitrary number that they've said, well, this is our liability. The rest's on you, brother. So there's a lot to forget here, and especially for my red hat world. But when Trump himself says, if we come up with a better plan, I'll present it, that should be a giant red flag of there's no plan. In fact, there's not even a concept of a plan. There's nothing. I used to say at least, they had pay or die. At least you go back to that. But not even that on the blank sheet of paper. And look, back when he was president and their big push was to destroy the Affordable Care Act, and John McCain gave it the thumbs down. People wanted to believe that there was a plan. And I kept saying back then, no, it's a stack of blank pages. There's nothing there. They have nothing to offer. Because we know what the answer is. The answer is Medicare for all. Instead of privatizing Medicare, we should be grabbing it with both hands and white-knuckling it. Where's Charlton Heston when we need him? Where's my grandparents' generation who, had you told them you were taking Medicare from them, you would have told you, you'll pry it from my cold dead hands as I beat you with my walker. But we've been lulled into this sense of, I got a concept of a plan. And evidently they got the biggest healthcare companies in the country looking into how they can more efficiently, make profit. Because I don't know if you've been part of the healthcare system for a while, but profit is at the heart of everything they do. Insurance is at the heart of everything they do. Not patient care, not continuity of care, not what's in the best interest of that patient, but what's in the interest of the insurance companies. I've been getting emails from people all across this country, angry emails of how they've been screwed over by one insurance company or another. At some point, the hope is that we as voters prioritize that anger into moving for policies that are going to make our lives better. Because you know what? To be part of a prosperous America, part of that's health security. To have solid standing in this country, it's health security. It's making sure that if you get sick, you have the right to see a doctor and you have the right to get health care. But hey, maybe that's a concept too. Want to hear your thoughts? You got any concepts? I want to hear it. Rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back with Will Ragland. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, we heard a lot about Project 2025 during the campaign. And look, it is the Heritage Foundation's wet dream list. It is the conservative movement's It's their values. It's who they are. It's what they want. They're very clear, very open. Give them credit. Arrogant, but honest. This is what they want to do to America. And working people should have paid, I think, more attention to it. But the question is how much of that is now going to become policy? Because if you remember during the campaign, Trump was like, oh, no. And, well, we're hearing, yeah. And here to share some thoughts on what we should be looking out for and what his organization is paying attention to. I've asked Will Ragland to come talk with us. Will is the Vice President of Research, Advocacy, and Outreach for the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Will, thanks for taking time for us.
Really glad to be here, Rick.
So we heard a lot about Project 2025. We here on this program, we talked about the 900-plus page, hat trick of horrible, the bad policies that they wanted. How much of that was just a wish list, and how much of that do you think is going to be moved towards policy?
Oh, I think it is very much in line with what their goals are. How much we'll be able to get done, I think, remains to be seen. But I think it's important to remember their first priority of business that Russ Vought has recently laid out and has talked about over the course of the last 2 years. Russ Vought, it was Trump's first OMB director, was an architect of Project 2025, and is now his nominee to be his OMB director again. And the OMB director is the traffic cop, the policy mover and shaker. They direct everything that comes through all the various agencies. And his number one priority is to consolidate power within the office of the presidency. All of the policy issues, from tariffs, taxes, immigration, flows down from this. And they're going to work to make sure that there are as little obstacles as possible to getting their agenda through. What does that mean? Some listeners on your show may remember the Schedule F. So this is their move that they started last administration, and will push forward again this time to eliminate any career civil servant that could tell them no. So think of scientists, think of doctors and healthcare experts, think of, an agency's general counsel that could say, actually, you can't do that because it's against the law. They're working to get rid of them and replace them with Trump loyalists. They want to get rid of all independent agencies. They think he's said specifically that he believes they're unconstitutional, and he thinks the Supreme Court will agree with them. What are those independent agencies? They're things like the FCC. They're like the FEC, the NLRB, the Federal Reserve, the Federal Trade Commission, a number of other agencies as well that have longer terms, a set of commissioners that are supposed to be above the political fray. And those along with those two things, along with the Impoundment Act, which is a fancy word for ignoring Congress's directives on spending, not spending the money the way that Congress has directed in an appropriations bill or another set of stuff. So that's really the core thing that they're going to focus on first. Yeah,
something minor like that. Like we got a king now. Is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, they're working very hard to in the transition right now to make sure that any opponents in Congress know that there will be threats of a primary and a public lashing that we're seeing with Hegseth and Joni Ernst a little bit. So that is something that we've seen in the past and will be ramped up again.
No, absolutely. And you brought up Schedule F, and we had talked extensively about that during the run-up in the campaign. And understand, the Heritage Foundation's already did the vetting for the people they want to replace all of these folks, these career people that you've talked of. And I don't think in a good way. They weren't vetted for their qualifications and their standing in the industry. They were vetted for their loyalty and their willingness to do whatever corporate America wants. And I think working people had better wake up to that reality and pay an awful lot of attention to that.
Yes. I mean, I think it's coming out now more and more that his first priority was to bring some of these people in, even though he said he had nothing to do with it, didn't have any idea. Some of his first appointments, like Russ Vought, are bringing in folks that are going to do some serious harm to policies that have helped working people and block any progress on things that working people rely on. What are they?
So let me ask you this. Hold on.
Unions? Oh yeah.
Let me ask you this then, because look, there's a lot of anger out there, and the anger is real. People are struggling. People are having a hard time making ends meet. I know a lot of people who are having a hard time. They believe the federal government's broken. They believe all of it. They've been told this repeatedly my entire lifetime. Government doesn't work. Government's the problem. Government's broken. So the idea of getting rid of the bureaucracy, of smashing the machine, so to speak, might be appealing to some. What if that were to happen? What do you think happens to average everyday working people like me who go, wait a second, I don't think maybe we shouldn't dismantle the Department of Labor and the NLRB and OSHA and the EPA and all down the list. Maybe we shouldn't destroy all this, but we've been sold it's all bad, it's all broken. What do you think that looks like?
I think that is a really good point. I mean, look, they want to take a wrecking ball to the whole thing. And I think that is appealing to a lot of folks who think that institutions have failed to protect them, and that they're right. And they haven't. But in a lot of ways, we have the least worst system in the world, and we shouldn't be defending that. We should be working to put together a set of reforms and eliminating things that haven't worked, quite frankly. But it should be about putting in and replacing institutions and programs that directly protect the people. People I think are okay with a federal government and agencies and programs that work to protect and uplift the working people. I think they would be supportive.
No, I think we want that. Look, at the end of the day, I think the average person, I think everyone understands that the only way you're going to hold back corporate power and the power of greed is by a federal government that restrains that a little bit. I don't think the average person really wants Elon Musk to have unfettered power and to do whatever he wants. I think they want some guardrails. I think they want some dulling of the edges a little bit. So I don't think it's a hard sale. But again, we've been told for so long, from my lifetime, Reagan forward, of just how bad the federal government is. For me, this is the perfect storm of horrible, because you've got a populace that's okay with smashing things a little bit, and an administration hell bent on it.
Yeah, we have to come out and stop being put in a defensive crouch of defending the status quo and our normal run of business. It's not working for too many people. It's not working for folks. I mean, we've talked about healthcare. It's not working for most people. It's the most expensive system in the world, and is failing too many. We have to have some really creative thinking to try and make this a much more affordable, effective system for people, and have and be willing to talk about some of the failures and some of the progress. But I don't think that anybody wants just to rip everything down and have no supports and just let corporations do what they will with patients, with workers, and that's what what the signals that I'm seeing right now, just in terms of their nominees, are all very corporate friendly for the most part, billionaires with a seemingly self-interested role to try and make more money. That doesn't look like, to me, that it's working for the people.
No, I'm right there with you. No, look, this is going to be an administration of, for, and by the billionaire CEO class. So the question for me is, are there opportunities that are going to come out of this? Because look, I think the suffering isn't going to get much better. I think it's actually going to get a lot worse. And as I've been saying here on the program for a while, the solutions that are going to come are going to be out of their savagery and the suffering that average people feel, because it ain't getting any better for the working class of this country under this administration. So what opportunities do you think are out there?
I'm excited about this. For most of my career in politics, I've had to, sort of follow a script that has been written by someone else. And I think there is an opportunity to bring in a new generation of voices and ideas to talk directly to working people. There's a new media landscape. It's all changed. And there's a real opportunity for us to discuss, debate, and talk about new ideas that will benefit the middle class and have a sharp contrast for what's happening on the other side. Their tax proposals, when you combine it with what they've put out there, what Trump has outlined in terms of his tariffs, the only people that are going to benefit are the top 1%.
Sure.
And this is analysis that my group, the Center for American Progress, has put out recently. And I think that there will be a really big opportunity for us to make the case there. Now from where I said, I think we've long had the facts on our side. Yeah. This is also an opportunity for delivery and taking advantage of new mediums and finding where people are and taking it to them. Having genuine, authentic voices, not afraid of conflict and confrontation. And that in and of itself will drive the coverage. That in and of itself will get attention. And that is something that voters are craving. They want authentic people to talk about real problems, real issues in their lives, and propose solutions that even if they may not think that they agree with them, at least they know where they stand. Because I can't tell you the number of times I saw interviews with Trump voters where they said, well, I don't really agree with him on here, but at least I know where he stands. At least I know what he thinks on this issue. And I think there's something to that. We need to do more of that and stop worrying about some perfect poll tested sentence that's going to change the mind of voters. And
to be perfectly pure in making sure that you're perfectly pure in every ideological position on the other side, that tolerance does go both ways, and something I've talked about for a long time. But you talked about the middle class, and I think that's kind of it's one of those frames I stay away from, because I think most people that I know are working class, and for me the idea of a middle class is kind of a conceptual thing for me. I talk about policies that are going to help working people, folks that go to work every day, punch a clock at the end of the week, collect a paycheck that doesn't go far enough, they get their health care from a workplace that doesn't cover them enough. They have a retirement plan that isn't going to give them any security in the future. There are so many things that I think we frame a little differently than I would like to see. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you agree? Disagree? Because I look at this middle class thing, because it's basically saying, well, we care about the middle class, but the hell with everybody underneath that. Does that make any sense?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the middle class frame is sort of this weird, nebulous sort of cloud, but is something that everyone wants to strive toward, right? And
but I don't know what it means.
Right. A lot of times we forget the people that are actually working every day, punching the clock, trying to get to that middle class place, whatever it is, where they can afford a home, where they can provide for their family in a way where and have time to spend with them after their workday is done. So I think that's really smart and something that we should probably think more of. One thing I would say is one policy issue I think that it doesn't get enough attention, especially covering the gamut, is housing. This is the biggest affordability issue, across whatever you want to talk. People talk about eggs and milk and groceries, and I hear that,
yeah. But
housing is the main driver of all of this. And while I think our side has put forward some things here and there, and the other side basically just says we're going to drill, baby, drill, and that's going to be the magic bullet. We need to do better. Our side needs to do better. We need to find a way for folks to attain and become part of the middle class and live the American dream, whatever that is. But, a big part of that is owning your own home or being able to afford a home, a very permanent place where you're renting. And to me, our side hasn't discussed enough of that, and the other side just brushes it off.
Well, I mean, for me, that middle class, if you're going to use that frame, it's about security, stability, and and safety. For me, that's part of all of that, and the stability, having health security, having retirement security, and job security. And these are all things that I think are really important, which is why I'm such a huge fan of labor unions, and why I think the way we reunite this country and the way we bring prosperity back is to encourage that. And look, I think Joe Biden had a lot of great messaging. I thought there was a lot of good material there. It just wasn't deliverable. And I think Democrats got to do better on that front. But also, like you said, we've got to be engaging more. We've got to be, however that messaging is going to happen, it better happen soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought a lot of the stuff that Biden did and a lot of the stuff that Biden said really resonated with me in a lot of ways. But we have to show up where people are.
Yep. Okay.
We have to take the fight to them. We have to be in spaces where we might feel a little uncomfortable. We have to be willing to confront them. We have to be willing to have the debate. And at least if we have people know where we're coming from on a particular issue or a particular part of the debate. We can't let them define us.
Okay. And I'm with you. Last question. What's the number one thing you're looking for in the new year? What's that thing that Will goes, this is my issue. What are you paying attention to?
Well, I think the big thing that will be talked about throughout the year is the tax package that's going to start moving. But that's going to incorporate. There are a lot of things that are going to be part of this. I think you're going to have, a big piece of this will be healthcare. Honestly, they're going to work to cut Medicaid throughout this year and process through Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy's Doge. Medicaid seems to be the place where they think they can save the most money, which is terrifying, and a lot of which includes a lot of seniors, by the way. So I think I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how tariffs play out and how that will impact people's bottom lines in their pocketbooks, and how much of a backlash will come from the implementations of some of those. And I'm looking at our labor markets. I'm looking at how well. How if this a strong labor market can continue into the future, labor market that the Biden-Harris administration helped to put up, but there are a lot of challenges, and my number one thing will be to see how the healthcare dynamics through the tax package that's going to be pushed through plays out, and I think that will be one of our biggest opportunities to make the case for us and against them.
No, I'm right there with you. Will Ragland, I appreciate you taking time for us. Vice President of Research, Advocacy, and Outreach at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Will, thanks so much.
Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate the time. Want to hear your thoughts. What is the big issue for you? As I've talked about, it's the labor part. It's what they do at the Department of Labor. And there's somebody who's somewhat maybe possibly friendly, but I still think the bad things are going to happen. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I'm going to tell you, I think Will is right. Healthcare is going to be one of the big things that the Trump administration goes after. And again, got the concept of a plan. And what's weird to me is you've got all these pundits who unable to be imaginative, see beyond the tip of their nose. I guess the question is it the Tina mentality that there's no alternative? Is that so pervasive in the elite pundit class that even considering the possibility that something couldn't get done is summarily dismissed as impossible? Or maybe are they in the corporate bag and aren't allowed to be imaginative? I don't know, but either way, I think we need to stop listening to these people like Martha Raddatz, who out of hand, said Ro Khanna's idea of Medicare for all, never going to happen. I got to tell you, the more we see these companies getting away with the things that they get away with, the more I think you're going to see people coming around to saying we need an alternative. And here to share some thoughts on what the coming year could look like, what we should be paying attention to on the healthcare front, I've asked my good friend Laura Packard to come talk with us. Laura's the executive director of Healthcare Voter. You can check out their work at healthcarevote.org. Laura, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you make of this? Look, I started off the show talking about Kirsten Wilker and her question to Trump about what the concept of a plan is, and his response being, well, Obamacare stinks, but we're looking for better answers. And now this Raddatz woman saying, well, it's never going to happen, Medicare for all, this kind of view that this is it, and, well, it's all going to be bad. You got any thoughts?
Well, one of the problems with concepts of a plan is that Trump has had a decade to come up with something, because I believe he's been promising something great since 2015, and next year is 2025. And still, we are waiting on an actual plan. But we know what they want to do is they want to cut health care away from millions of Americans to pay for tax breaks to guys like Elon Musk. They're already saying that they want to cut Medicaid, and they want to cut all the health care that millions of us rely on. Medicaid is a program that allows seniors to get stays in nursing homes that they need, and people with disabilities to get the care that they need, and working class families to get health care. And so, of course, they may say that they are going to protect Medicare, and they may not say that they don't want to repeal the Affordable Care Act right away. But the program they have said they're coming after is Medicaid, which so many of us depend on. And also, the Affordable Care Act, one of the things that makes policies more affordable were the credits that were a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, and those expire next year. Right. So millions of Americans are going to face higher health insurance costs unless Congress acts.
Look, and I'm at the point right now where I'm going, that all that should happen, because I want people upset. I want people angry. I want people pointing at Trump and the Republicans for doing what they're going to do. Because as I've been saying, look, the solutions will be in the savagery. The suffering that's coming out of their savagery, the solutions will come out of that. People will start to demand more and better from our government, knowing that Trump and Musk aren't going to deliver anything for working class families. And maybe out of that, we come back somewhere together and say, we should be doing something. And look, I'm a supporter of Medicare for all. I think having one giant insurance pool makes nothing but common sense. But it's going to take a ways to get to.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is hard. If it was easy, we would have done it already. And the Affordable Care Act, which was very hard to get passed, that was a partial solution. Right. It made things better for some people. It did not make things perfect for everybody. And that was really hard to get past.
Yeah, I mean, if we would have spent the last 14 years tweaking it and making it better, we'd be so much further down the road, instead of a party, an entire Republican Party doing everything they can do to overturn it, defund it, strangle it, drag it in the bathtub and drown it. Every bit of this, we'd be so much further down the road. And I think societally, we'd probably be a little bit happier.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the frustration with that in the recent murder of the healthcare CEO in New York. And after that, thousands of people sharing their health insurance horror stories, some related to United Healthcare, some related to other insurance companies. Right. But everybody that's had any kind of medical crisis, any kind of severe event, has got some sort of horror story about the insurance system and the way it works in America today. Yeah. And unfortunately, we're hearing silence about actually fixing it.
No, and that's the thing. We're focused on the event and not what precipitated the event. So let me get you into some trouble then. Because I've been taking a lot of heat for my position. Look, I don't condone violence. I think murder is wrong. But in some cases, this one being one of them, I kind of understand it. I'm not going to condemn it. I don't condone it. I'm not saying go out and do it. But, I kind of understand. So let's get you in trouble. Thoughts?
Well, I think murder is wrong, whether it's one person or whether it's tens of thousands of Americans that don't have health insurance or get denied the treatment they need to stay alive from their health insurance every year. That is just plain wrong. And you can see with this particular case and with the thousands of people that have come forward that we've reached a boiling point in America. It should never have gotten this bad. But this is what has happened when a problem has not been addressed.
So what are we paying attention to in the opening days? Because there's been a lot of talk of the first 100 days, the first day being the day of dictators. What are you watching as a healthcare advocate, as someone who this is your world? What are you watching for?
Well, I don't know that they're going to try to directly repeal the Affordable Care Act because it didn't turn out so well for them last time. So some people involved may have learned, may not have learned. But as I mentioned before, those subsidies that make insurance policies affordable for working families, for millions of working families, that's something that they can kill by doing nothing. And they like to do nothing.
Right.
And if they do that, that means millions more dollars back in the pockets of billionaires like Elon Musk. So it's a twofer for them. They get to sabotage the Affordable Care Act, and they get to use this money to pay for tax breaks to billionaires.
A Republican win-win.
Yeah, and I mean, it's on all of us to make sure that they don't get away with it, that they are face the public demand for affordable health care, and they don't get to hide away in Washington, D.C. and vote for cuts to the care we depend on and never even hear anything about it. So we need to be loud. We need to make sure that they hear that you cannot cut Medicaid, you cannot cut the Affordable Care Act, you cannot cut Medicare, and you especially cannot cut the health care we depend on to give tax breaks to billionaires.
Right. But the argument's going to be, Laura, and you know it as well as anyone, and because they're laying the groundwork. I mean, I see Doge Boy out there all the time, saying, our debt's too big. We need to cut all this waste. And the waste they're going to frame is, those lazy people on Medicaid. They need to go out and get jobs with job-oriented health care like the rest of us. That's going to be part of the shtick that they sell.
Well, two things. First of all, if you are not healthy enough to hold a job, how can you expect to pay into the system like they're wanting? I mean, if you're not providing health care to get people to a place where they can work, then how can you be expecting them to have employer health insurance? And the second thing is, if they really cared about the deficit, then why are they also talking about renewing the Trump tax scam, which is tax breaks for billionaires and corporations? So if they really cared about the deficit, they would not be talking about more tax breaks for wealthy cheats.
Well, their line with that then, Laura, would clearly be, these tax cuts pay for themselves, because you've heard this before, I'm sure, at least a gazillion times. It will, you can finish the sentence. It's going to, what's
trickle down.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to trickle. It's going to be like manna from heaven.
The budget deficits trickle down on the rest of us. And it isn't like this money comes out of a vacuum. Every tax break we give to a billionaire is something the rest of us have to pay for. We have to pay for Elon Musk's yachts and trips to Mars and all of that. That it isn't like this money comes from nowhere. It's us, the taxpayers. We can choose to have healthcare for the people that need it, or we can choose to subsidize these billionaires, and we don't have to make that choice.
Now, what's interesting to me is you look at a lot of the, like welfare programs, a lot of Medicaid spending, a lot of those dollars go to red states. A lot of those go to rural areas. A lot of those go to places where the red hats are prevalent. Will a cut like this, will something that makes their lives worse be something that they recognize and recognize as something the Trump administration did, or is this just more government's bad and government's broken and another reason to destroy it? I'm curious, and I guess it's a kind of a rhetorical thing, but do you have any thoughts?
Well, I think that some people are reachable and some people aren't. That we live in a fog of misinformation. And unfortunately, some people don't get news anymore from reliable sources. They get news filtered through social media and their friends and a podcast, not like this podcast, but bad podcasts. They're getting information that's not factual. And then people won't know what this administration is doing to their healthcare unless somebody tells them, and unless we have a way to reach them and for them to hear it.
Because I go back to the shooting of the CEO. What I'm hoping comes of this is not just we're going to focus on this kid and we're going to focus on his privilege, and we're going to focus on oh, he's crazy, and walk away. We're going to walk away from underlying causes. United Healthcare, 32% denial rate. The denial rates by these insurance companies are crazy. And then you talk about the profit rates that they put in their pocket, and the administrative costs, and all of the healthcare dollars that we're spending in every other fashion but getting care for people and making sure that people get well. That's the conversation I think we should be having going forward. Yeah, this happened. You take it for what it is, but also pick up part of the why, and maybe from a policy point, maybe Democrats should be hammering on this.
I agree, because this kid was a kid of privilege, which I think that maybe some people are surprised by, but even middle class and rich people are getting screwed by insurance companies. Yep. This is not something that just working class people are dealing with, which is, again, why thousands of people from all walks of life have been sharing their health insurance horror stories over the past few days and weeks, because this is something that everybody experiences if you have any kind of serious interaction with health insurance in America. And it doesn't have to be like this. I mean, yes, single payer is going to be hard to get to, and it could be decades, because we need to solve money in politics. We need to solve the filibuster. We need to solve the Supreme Court. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of work that needs to be done to get there. But reining in insurance companies does not require single payer. There's things we could do right now. If you look at Illinois, they passed the Healthcare Protection Act this year. It was signed into law by their governor this year. And some of the parts of that, it bans step therapy. So insurance companies don't get to dictate what your care is and make you try something that doesn't work first because it's cheaper for them while you suffer. Yeah. So bans that. It bans prior authorization for mental health crises. So if you are in a dark place, you can check yourself into a hospital and get treatment without having to fight your insurance company to get it covered first. So there's all kinds of pieces in that too, where insurance companies have to have directories of people that actually take insurance, and they're fined if they have ghost networks of people that don't actually exist, and lots of pieces. But the point of this omnibus bill is there were multiple provisions that rein in insurance companies in Illinois. And I would love to see that be a model in other states, or even federally, because again, we don't have to accept this. This doesn't have to be like this. We can do something about it.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, because the day before the United Healthcare Group CEO was murdered, I had a guest on, and we were talking about United Healthcare as being probably what Medicare will turn into. They're one of the largest Medicare Advantage plan holders. They're the one pushing heavy as we're going to almost kill off Medicare as we know it through these privatization schemes. The conversation has been that we may end up with a single payer kind of situation, but it's going to be privatized throughout all of these different insurance companies, which will give us really no control over the care that we get. It'll all be, insurance company based. Do you see that as something possible? Because I've had conservatives tell me, they're for single payer, but as long as it's private.
Well, I mean, we are heading in that direction in that recently it flipped that a majority of people on Medicare are on Medicare Advantage over traditional Medicare. And traditional Medicare, one of the real highlights of it is that you don't have to deal with prior authorizations. You can just see a doctor and get treatment. You don't need to be in a narrow network of people that are approved, and they can change their minds about who's approved. So we're already, just through inertia, heading towards a system where they are going to control Medicare.
Yeah, but I'm going to argue with you, Laura, for a second. It's not by inertia. It's by policy. This was done on purpose in 2003 when they gave these privatized plans the ability to negotiate for prescription drug prices, do a whole bunch of advertising, spend a bunch of money in other places that Medicare can't do. Because these managed plans are squeezing the quarter till the eagle screams, and when that happens, that means, well, seniors don't get the care that they should be getting without them knowing it. So for me, it's 2003. The Republicans rammed through that Medicare Modernization Act, of which all of this is part. This killing of Medicare was policy based, not choice based.
And unfortunately, the folks that it looks like are going to be nominees next year are all in favor of that. So if you look at Dr. Oz, he's a big supporter of Medicare Advantage. So there are people being put into power next year that 100% want to help insurance companies rip the rest of us off. But I'm going to go back to what I said a little while ago, in that we don't have to accept this. Even if we lived in a Medicare Advantage world, our Congress has the ability to rein in their ability to profit off our suffering. These are choices that they are making or not making. There are European countries that have a private health insurance system that is heavily regulated and doesn't profit off of basic care. This is a choice we are making by not making it, that we're letting them profit off of denying 30% of their claims and letting people suffer to make a larger profit. We could choose otherwise.
Laura, I appreciate your insight, your knowledge. I look forward to in the new year, keeping up on what this administration is doing, keeping people up on the information. Also, we're going to push people towards your show, Care Talk, right?
Yes, you should check out my YouTube streaming show, Care Talk, and podcast. Wherever you get your podcasts, just look for Care Talk with Laura Packard. We have had guests on this in the past few weeks that talk about what the Trump administration could do to drug pricing, health insurance, reproductive care, Medicaid. And we're going to keep talking about what's at stake next year, what could happen, informing people, and what they can do about it, because forewarned is forearmed. We need to know before January 20th what's coming and what to do about it.
There you go. Laura Packard, I appreciate the time. Executive Director of Healthcare Voter. Check out their website, healthcarevoter.org. Laura, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Want to hear your thoughts. You got a healthcare horror story? I want to hear about it. Or look, if you've got a health insurance company that you love, I want to hear about that too. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2012. That was the day that Michigan Governor Rick Snyder signed right-to-work legislation into law. The birthplace of the United Auto Workers Union had just become the 24th state to pass legislation that guaranteed the open shop and the prohibition of mandatory dues collection. More than 10,000 trade unionists gathered in Lansing that day to express their outrage. The only source of income that unions have is their dues base. Without it, unions can't adequately represent their members. Work of unions isn't just about effectively negotiating a contract. It also includes fighting contract violations, excessive discipline and wrongful discharges, and enforcing safety and good working conditions on the job. All of this suffers under right to work. But this is nothing new. Right to work laws have their roots in fighting the Wagner Act and the CIO organizing drives throughout the South in the 1940s. The Texas billionaire and lobbyist Vance Muse fought hard against child labor laws, the 8-hour day, and even the right for striking workers to picket. Pro-segregationist Democrats, cotton brokers, Fred Koch, the DuPont brothers, Gerald Sloan of General Motors, and others supported him in his efforts. His organization, the Christian American Association, was closely aligned with the Ku Klux Klan. Muse argued that segregation could only be maintained by enforcing the open shop. Otherwise, whites would be forced to interact with blacks. He said, quote, "From now on, white women and white men will be forced into organizations with black African apes whom they will have to call brothers or lose their jobs. The wealth class has spent millions of dollars over 60 years to defeat working people and reverse hard-fought gains." Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So, look, as Laura was talking about, as they attack Medicaid, and trust me, they're going to attack the ACA. They're going to attack what safety net programs are left in this country. They're going to completely shred what is left of the social safety net. And the healthcare component is a huge part of it, especially the Medicaid part. And Doge Boy's running around talking how much, savings they're going to get from Medicaid. What that means, understand what Medicaid does. Medicaid is that catch-all at the bottom for your poorest, most vulnerable, your sickest, uninsurable folks who need it the most. Half of the babies, again, for the baby folks, we love the babies. Half of the babies born in this country through Medicaid programs. So when you start talking about gutting those programs, what you're talking about is a lot of pain. I look at from a personal position, and all of us have our own personal situations. I look at the ACA being gutted and maybe potentially overturned at some point as a bad thing, because in my personal situation, my wife is racking up a lot of healthcare bills as we're going through the tragedy that we're going through. If they undid the ACA caps on how much insurers are required to spend, we'll come back. And before the ACA, our insurance was capped at $1 million. We're well past that now. So what then happens? Well, the denials. If there's no insurer to pick up the tab, then it goes to Medicaid. Well, if you gut Medicaid for people who are unable to pay the healthcare costs, then what happens? Well, I'm going to rack up a ton of healthcare bills. And ultimately, it's going to end up on the back of the taxpayer anyway, in the most expensive ways possible. And this is the part that I find most egregious, because we're spending tons of money on healthcare. What was the number I saw Bernie Sanders came out with? Something like 15 to 25% of all of the money spent on healthcare goes to administrative costs. Something like $1 trillion a year that's being spent on lining the pockets of executives and paper pushers and not getting into hospitals and doctors' offices. We're spending a lot of money on administrative and not much not that money on caring for people. So me, as someone who does believe in single payer, one giant pool, one giant cradle to grave pool of money that pays the bills, I think that's the way to go. And I think the majority of Americans believe that. In fact, 2020, there was a Gallup poll that 63% of Americans back single payer. A third of Republicans and independents. That number is increasing. There is another poll I saw from 2018 found 52% of Republicans supported Medicare for all. Now, I have yet to find a Republican voter that I know personally who isn't in favor of the idea of having one giant insurance pool. Because what we know of insurance pooling, risk is limited by having a larger number in the pool. So you could actually bring down the costs. We could care for people, and there wouldn't be all of the administrative cost, or what you could argue, waste. I would say a CEO's salary, that's waste. I would say a vice president's salary, waste. We should be paying CNAs. We should be paying LPNs. We should be paying RNs. We should be paying the people who mop the floor more money and less to the CEOs and the bean counters. The people who are actually by the bedsides wiping you know what. We should be paying them more. We should be investing in more infrastructure. But instead, what are we doing? We're consolidating. We're making larger institutions. We're making machines. And understand, healthcare is not factory work, but it's what they're trying to turn it into. So for me, this coming administration is going to do a lot of things that I think are going to make a lot of people's lives much worse. I do believe that their fetish of getting rid of the ACA, their fetish of destroying Medicare and finally privatizing that off and destroying Medicaid because, hey, screw the poor. I think that's going to be very painful for people. And as I've said 1,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000 more, the solutions will come out of the suffering because of their savagery. For me, it's that simple. The important part is that we're paying attention, that we are aware with our eyes open, not to the propaganda being shoved down our throat, but what happens to our friends and our neighbors and to ourselves. So I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, grab the podcast, freespeech.org. And as always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.